Every major food culture discovered in its own way a clever shortcut, turning ordinary ingredients into tangy, bubbly, life-filled drinks that last longer, taste brighter, and, crucially, interact with your body in ways plain food does not. From cool, salty yogurts to effervescent teas and fermented grain tonics, these beverages were once daily tools for hydration, digestion, and survival. And modern science is starting to explain why. Today, I'll walk you through 11 fermented drinks you can use right away to support digestion, steady blood sugar, reduce inflammatory signals, and deliver bioavailable nutrients, each with a simple recipe and sensible safety notes. No magic promises, just practical, evidence-aware ways to fold fermentation into your routine. Quick preview: 11 drinks: Ayran, Tepache, Lassi, Beet Kvass, Boza, Fermented Turmeric Tonic, Rye Kvass, Kombucha, Jun Tea, Apple Cider Vinegar Drink, and Kefir, ranked to help you pick what fits your goals. Some are powerhouse staples with the most clinical research behind them. Others are traditional, low-tech options that bring unique compounds to the table. If you like practical, science-forward tips that actually fit in a busy week, hit like and subscribe. There's a printable starter guide in the description to help you get going. 11. Ayran, a salty, frothy tradition from the Middle East and Central Asia. Ayran shows up wherever hot summers and simple dairy intersect. A chilled, savory yogurt drink that was, and still is, meant for thirst, food pairing, and easy digestion. At its core, it's just yogurt and water, sometimes a pinch of salt, whisked until frothy. The fermentation profile is the same lactic acid fermentation as yogurt. Bacteria convert lactose into lactic acid, which both preserves the product and makes the dairy easier on some stomachs. For many people, that pre-digesting effect means fewer bloating symptoms and gentler handling of milk sugars. It also supplies live cultures that can help support a diverse gut microbiome when the product is unpasteurized and live. DIY tip: stir together equal parts plain yogurt and cool water. Add about 1/4 teaspoon of salt per glass and whisk or shake until frothy. Serve ice cold. For a spiced version, add a pinch of ground cumin or a dash of sumac to brighten it. If you buy it, look for refrigerated bottles labeled "contains live cultures" rather than shelf-stable pasteurized versions. Safety note: because it's dairy-based, Ayran isn't suitable for those with a true milk allergy. People with lactose sensitivity often tolerate traditionally fermented yogurt drinks better, but start small. If you're immunocompromised, consult your healthcare provider before adding live dairy ferments. 10. Tepache, the sweet, fizzy drink made from pineapple scraps. Tepache is a beautiful example of low-waste fermentation. In Mexico, people long used pineapple peels and cores, a bit of sweetener, and time to produce a gently effervescent, tangy drink. The fermentation is driven by wild yeasts and bacteria naturally present on the fruit and in the environment, producing organic acids, small amounts of alcohol, and an attractive tang. Pineapple brings bromelain, an enzyme mix that can support digestion of proteins. The fibrous scraps also supply prebiotic carbohydrates that feed beneficial microbes during fermentation. The result is a refreshing, slightly sweet beverage with mild probiotic potential. DIY tip: put pineapple skins and core into a jar, add water and a small amount of raw cane sugar or piloncillo. Toss in a cinnamon stick if you like, cover with a cloth and leave at room temperature for about 48 hours. Then strain and refrigerate. Drink within a few days for best flavor and minimal alcohol development. Safety note: because Tepache is a wild ferment, keep tools and jars clean, monitor for off smells or visible mold, and assume a small alcohol content may develop. Avoid if you need to abstain. If you're new to wild ferments, consider using a small batch and refrigerating promptly. 9. Lassi, South Asia's churning answer to digestion and spice-friendly relief. Lassi is South Asia's versatile yogurt drink, ranging from sweet mango blends to savory, salted versions spiced with cumin and ginger. Traditionally used alongside meals, its fermented dairy-based supplies live cultures and lactic acid that can ease digestion, while spices like cumin and ginger add carminative effects that help relax gas and cramping. The classic salty lassi is often recommended after a heavy or spicy meal for its soothing palate-cleansing quality. DIY tip: blend plain yogurt with some water or milk to reach a drinkable consistency. Add a pinch of salt and a dash of ground-roasted cumin. For a sweeter version, blend in fruit and a touch of honey. Use yogurt labeled live cultures for the most probiotic benefit. Safety note: like other dairy ferments, lassi is not safe for those with a true milk allergy. If you're lactose intolerant, start with a small serving to assess tolerance. Commercial bottles can be pasteurized. If you want live cultures, choose refrigerated products marked "contains live cultures." 8. Beet kvass, an earthy ruby tonic famed for nitrates and liver-loving betaine. Beet kvass comes from Eastern Europe and Russia, a fermented beverage made from beets, salt and water. Unlike lacto-fermented dairy drinks, beet kvass is a vegetable brine fermentation where lactic acid bacteria transform beet sugars into organic acids and other metabolites. Beets are naturally rich in dietary nitrates, which the body can convert into nitric oxide, a compound that helps relax blood vessels and support healthy circulation. Beet components also include betaine, which has long been associated with liver-supporting pathways. While more research is ongoing, small human trials and animal studies suggest beet-derived nitrates can improve blood flow and modestly affect blood pressure in some people. DIY tip: chop raw beets into chunks, cover with salted water, about 1–2 tablespoons of salt per quart. Leave at cool room temperature for 3 to 5 days until tangy, then strain and refrigerate. Drink a small shot, 1/4 to 1/2 cup before a meal, or toss a splash into a salad dressing for color and bite. Safety note: beet kvass has an assertive, earthy flavor, and it can temporarily color urine or stool pink or red. Harmless but surprising. People on nitrate-sensitive medications or with specific cardiovascular conditions should consult their clinician before adopting a nitrate-rich routine. 7. Boza, an ancient, thick fermented grain beverage with B vitamins and satiety power. Boza is a fermented grain drink with a long history across the Balkans and Anatolia. Made from millet, wheat, or other grains, it's slightly sweet, thick and sour, with a texture that sits somewhere between drink and porridge. The fermentation produces B vitamins and organic acids and helps break down starches and proteins, improving digestibility and contributing to a sense of fullness. In traditional diets, boza served as a nourishing, energy-dense staple, valuable for people seeking a filling, nutrient-rich beverage rather than a low-calorie option. DIY tip: cook millet or a grain of your choice until soft, cool it. Then add a small starter, a little boza or a yeast bulb culture, with a touch of sugar and leave at room temperature for 1–2 days to ferment until tangy. Thin to drinking consistency if needed, and refrigerate. Safety note: boza can be calorically dense and contains gluten when made from wheat, so be mindful of portion size if you're watching overall intake. Commercially available boza can vary in whether it's pasteurized. Look for refrigerated, live options if you want active cultures. 6. Fermented turmeric tonic, unlocking curcumin's potential through fermentation. Turmeric is revered for its anti-inflammatory reputation, but the root's star compound, curcumin, is notoriously poorly absorbed. Fermentation can change that equation. Microbial processing breaks down turmeric's cell walls and can produce metabolites that increase curcumin's bioavailability, while live cultures and organic acids formed during fermentation may add synergistic anti-inflammatory and digestion-supportive actions. Combining fermented turmeric with black pepper or a small amount of fat is still useful, since piperine, from black pepper, and dietary fat are known to enhance curcumin absorption. The result is a tangy golden tonic that offers a different route to benefit than raw or powdered turmeric alone. DIY tip: grate fresh turmeric or use organic turmeric powder, blend with a starter culture, a splash of whey or a bit of existing live fermented drink, add a pinch of black pepper and a spoon of raw honey for sweetness, and ferment at room temperature for 24-48 hours before refrigerating. Start with small amounts, an ounce or two per day, to test tolerance. Safety note: turmeric can interact with blood-thinning medications and has mild antiplatelet effects. If you take anticoagulants or are preparing for surgery, check with your provider. Pregnant or breastfeeding women should also consult medical advice before adding concentrated turmeric preparations. 5. Rye kvass, a crunchy bread-based tonic that feeds the gut and offers gentle lift. Rye kvass is the fermented beverage made from rye bread or rye grain, steeped and fermented into a mildly sour, slightly fizzy drink that historically served as a nutritious refresher. As a cereal-based fermentation, it provides prebiotic fibers, like arabinoxylans, that help feed beneficial gut bacteria, plus B vitamins formed during fermentation. In times past, rye kvass was a daily restorative, hydrating, low in alcohol, and flavorful. Its composition helps support the microbiome by both feeding and introducing lactic ferment metabolites. DIY tip: toast or dry stale slices of rye bread, tear them into pieces, place in a jar with water and a small amount of sugar, cover and ferment at room temperature for 1 to 3 days. Strain and chill before drinking. You can flavor it with lemon peel or a few raisins if you want sweetness. Safety note: rye kvass contains gluten and isn't suitable for those with celiac disease or gluten intolerance. Use clean, well-rinsed equipment and watch for off-smells. If anything looks or smells moldy, discard. 4. Kombucha, fermented sweet tea that popularized bubbly probiotic sips worldwide. Kombucha is a sweet tea fermented by a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, known as a SCOBY. The SCOBY metabolizes sugar into organic acids, trace gases, and a modest spectrum of microbes, producing a tangy, effervescent beverage prized for its bright acidity and potential probiotic contribution. Some components formed during kombucha fermentation, like certain organic acids and partially broken down tea polyphenols, are thought to support liver detox pathways and enhance polyphenol bioavailability. Importantly, unpasteurized kombucha contains live cultures and organic acids. Pasteurized commercial bottles, while still tasty, may lack many of these live properties. DIY tip: brew strong tea, dissolve sugar while hot, cool to room temperature, add a healthy SCOBY and some starter kombucha, cover with a breathable cloth and ferment at room temperature 7 to 14 days depending on desired tartness. Bottle and refrigerate to slow further fermentation and preserve fizz. Safety note: homebrewed kombucha can develop unsafe contamination if jars and hands aren't clean and if fermentation is left unchecked. Always use hygienic practices, monitor batches, and refrigerate once they reach your preferred acidity. Some commercial kombuchas are pasteurized or heat-treated. Look for refrigerated jars labeled raw or with live cultures if you want active probiotics. People who must avoid alcohol should be aware that kombucha can contain trace alcohols from fermentation. 3. Jun tea. The lighter, honey-sweet cousin of kombucha with delicate green tea notes, Jun is often called the champagne of kombucha because its base is green tea and raw honey instead of black tea and cane sugar. It typically ferments a little faster and at slightly cooler temperatures, producing a lighter, subtler flavor and a different bouquet of bioactive compounds. Green tea catechins, such as EGCG, plus honey's unique polyphenols and enzymes. Those catechins have been associated with antioxidant activity and metabolism-supporting signals in humans, and the gentler fermentation profile of Jun makes it an appealing option for those seeking a softer, effervescent drink with a green tea character. And DIY tip, brew delicate green tea. Dissolve raw honey into the warm, not boiling tea, cool it to room temperature, add a Jun SCOBY or a particularly healthy kombucha starter, and ferment 5 to 10 days at a cooler room temperature. Rebottle and refrigerate to maintain carbonation. Safety note, Jun cultures and SCOBYs are less widely available than kombucha SCOBYs. Source a starter from a trusted supplier or a reputable brand. As with other home ferments, keep sanitation high and check for off odors. Jun can also develop small alcohol content. Avoid if abstaining. At this point, you're likely already imagining where each of these drinks might fit in your week. A frosty Ayran after a hot workout, a small beet kvass shot before dinner, a gentle Jun with an afternoon snack. Each one offers a distinct chemical and microbial pattern, different strains, acids, and byproducts that act on digestion, circulation, inflammation, and nutrient availability in complementary ways. What ties them together is simple. Fermentation makes things more bioactive, more digestible, and often more interesting to the palate. If you've been following along, pick one of these to try this week, something that aligns with your goals. Want gentle probiotic support and a starter that's researched? Kefir is likely your best first move. Curious about blood sugar control before carb-heavy meals? Apple cider vinegar has the clearest small trial evidence for that use. For now, I'll keep walking you down the list toward the most studied options and the practical steps I want you to feel confident making at home. Next up, we're moving into drinks, with deep clinical research and high practical payoff, two that often end up on daily rotation for people focused on digestion, blood sugar, and reliable probiotic exposure. 2. Apple cider vinegar drink, a folk remedy that made the jump into controlled trials. Apple cider vinegar, ACV, is as humble as it sounds. Crushed apples fermented first into cider and then into vinegar, often left cloudy with the mother, a visible mat of beneficial microbes and enzymes. People have used diluted acidic tonics for digestion and preservation for centuries. More recently, small controlled trials have looked at ACV's effect on blood sugar. The pattern that emerges is cautious but consistent. When a modest amount of ACV is diluted and taken before a carbohydrate-rich meal, some studies show a slower rise in post-meal glucose and a milder insulin response compared with no vinegar. That doesn't mean ACV cures diabetes, but it does mean this simple practice can be a low-cost tool to moderate glucose spikes for some people when used alongside sensible meals. What it is and how it works. ACV's active ingredient is acetic acid, produced during the vinegar stage of fermentation. Acetic acid appears to slow gastric emptying and alter carbohydrate digestion in the upper gut, which helps blunt the speed at which sugars enter the bloodstream. In addition, the organic acids and residual live culture in an unfiltered vinegar may have mild antimicrobial and digestive aid effects, and the acidic environment can influence how enzymes interact with food. Unlike pasteurized clear vinegars, versions labeled raw, unfiltered, or showing the mother in the bottle are the ones most likely to contain these live elements. Quick DIY or serving tip. Start simple and safe. Mix 1 tablespoon of raw apple cider vinegar into a full glass, 8 to 12 ounces, of water, and drink it about 10-15 minutes before a carb-heavy meal. If the taste is too sharp, begin with 1 teaspoon diluted in water and work up. You can add a squeeze of lemon or a touch of honey for flavor, but keep the dilution. Never sip undiluted ACV. Another gentle option is to use ACV as a component in a salad dressing or to add a splash to sparkling water for a fizzy, tart beverage. Safety and quality caveats: always dilute ACV. Undiluted vinegar is acidic enough to erode tooth enamel and irritate the throat or esophagus. Limit intake to modest, consistent amounts. 1 to 2 tablespoons per day, diluted across meals, is a common practical range used in research and by experienced consumers. If you take blood sugar-lowering medications, have low potassium, take certain cardiovascular medicines, or use anticoagulants, check with your healthcare provider before making ACV a regular habit. Pregnant or breastfeeding people and those with a history of esophageal or gastric irritation should also consult a clinician. Finally, when buying, prefer refrigerated, raw, unfiltered bottles labeled "Contains the mother" if you want the live, traditional experience. Pasteurized vinegar lacks live cultures and will behave differently. 1. Kefir, the probiotic heavyweight with the deepest clinical footprint. Kefir sits at the top of this countdown for a reason. It's a living, fermented dairy that brings a remarkable diversity of microbes and a long history of traditional use. And it has the broadest body of clinical research among fermented drinks. Originating in the mountains of the Caucasus and carried through the dairy traditions of Eastern Europe and the Middle East, kefir is made by fermenting milk with kefir grains, gelatinous clusters of bacteria and yeasts that metabolize lactose into lactic acid, carbon dioxide, and a host of fermentation byproducts. The result is a tangy, slightly effervescent drink, somewhere between drinkable yogurt and a thin yogurt smoothie, rich in probiotics, peptides, and B vitamins. What it is and how it works. Kefir grains host dozens of microbial strains, lactic acid bacteria, acetic acid bacteria, and several yeast species that collectively act on milk, sugar, protein, and fat. This multi-strain ecosystem both introduces live microbes into the digestive tract and produces metabolites that can influence gut immune signaling, nutrient absorption, and intestinal barrier function. Clinical studies of kefir and kefir-like preparations have reported benefits for people with irritable bowel symptoms, reductions in perceived lactose intolerance, improvements in some markers of inflammation, and modest effects on blood lipids and glucose control in certain populations. There are also intriguing signals from small trials and emerging research suggesting links between kefir, mood, and certain aspects of metabolic health, though, as always, findings are conditional and more research is underway. DIY tip. For traditional milk kefir, use roughly 1 tablespoon of kefir grains per quart, about 1 liter, of whole or low-fat milk. Place grains and milk in a clean glass jar. Cover with a breathable lid, a paper towel or breathable lid, and leave at room temperature for 24-48 hours, depending on how tart and thick you like it. Strain the grains and refrigerate the finished kefir. The grains can be reused indefinitely if cared for and can be shared. For a dairy-free option, water kefir grains make a bubbly, sweet ferment alternative. Feed them sugar water or coconut water and ferment 24 to 48 hours, then flavor and bottle. If you prefer to skip home brewing, look for refrigerated bottles labeled live cultures and check the label. Commercial kefirs vary widely in microbial content and may be heat-treated in some cases. Safety and quality caveats. Kefir is generally well tolerated, and many lactose-intolerant people can enjoy it because much of the lactose is consumed during fermentation, but it's not suitable for those with true milk allergy. Source kefir grains from reputable suppliers or community networks to avoid contamination. Grains obtained from dubious sources can introduce unwanted microbes. Keep fermentation vessels clean. Refrigerate finished kefir to slow fermentation and discard batches with off smells, unusual textures, or mold. If you are pregnant, immunocompromised, or on immune-modulating medications, consult your healthcare provider before adding live culture products regularly. Also be aware that homemade kefir can have a mild yeasty tang. and, in rare cases, low levels of alcohol formed during fermentation, typically negligible, but worth considering for those who abstain. Practical plans: how to add these drinks into a real week without overwhelm. If you want a simple, testable plan for transformation without a lot of fuss, try a 3-way starter week that hits different mechanisms: microbial load, blood sugar control, and circulation. Day 1 to 7, morning kefir shot. Start your day with 4 to 8 ounces of kefir to introduce probiotics and help digestion. Before lunch, a diluted ACV drink, 1 tablespoon ACV, in a full glass of water 10-15 minutes before a carb-focused meal, to see if you notice steadier post-meal energy. Midweek, add a small beet kvass shot, 1 to 2 ounces, before an evening meal to sample nitrate-based circulation benefits. Keep serving small and consistent rather than large, intermittent binges. Regular, modest exposure tends to be gentler and more sustainable. Customization by goal. For probiotic first goals: regularity, gut diversity, post-antibiotic support. Start with kefir or kombucha, aiming for a small daily serving. Choose kefir if you want the broadest microbial mix. For blood sugar stability, meals with bread, rice, or starchy sides. ACV before the meal is the most directly supported by trials. Start with 1 tablespoon diluted and monitor how you feel. To good. For circulation and athletic support, beet kvass or a beet-forward fermented drink can be a practical pre-workout shot because of dietary nitrates. For anti-inflammatory curiosity, a small daily fermented turmeric tonic or incorporating fermented turmeric into dressings can be a complementary strategy. Just check medication interactions. For variety and low-calorie fizz, kombucha or jun makes a pleasant, effervescent alternative to sugary sodas and provides organic acids and live cultures when unpasteurized. A few real-world tricks that make fermentation stick. Keep portions small and routine, not disruptive. Store raw products in the refrigerator after fermentation to slow microbial growth and preserve flavor. Label jars with start dates. When trying a new ferment, test it with a 1 to 2 ounce serving first to gauge tolerance. If you buy commercial products, favor refrigerated bottles labeled raw, unpasteurized, or contains live cultures, and check sugar content. Many commercial fermentations are back-sweetened. Safety summary and vulnerable groups. What to watch for every time. Fermentation is powerful because it concentrates biological activity. That power comes with predictable caveats. Raw ferments can, in rare circumstances, harbor unwanted microbes if hygiene is poor. Acidic beverages can erode enamel and irritate mucous membranes if taken undiluted. And concentrated phytochemicals, like curcumin or certain herbal additions, can interact with medications. For anyone who is pregnant, breastfeeding, immunocompromised, or taking prescription medication, especially blood thinners or glucose-lowering drugs, check with a healthcare provider before adding live fermented drinks to your regular routine. If you ever see visible mold, an off-putting rotten smell, or a strange film that you don't recognize, discard the batch. When in doubt, err on the side of refrigeration, smaller batches, and using trusted starter cultures or commercial products with clear labeling. Why fermentation can truly feel transformative, without the hype. Across cultures, fermentation shows up again and again because it reliably improves shelf life, taste, and, often, nutrition. That transformation happens through a few repeatable mechanisms. Microbes consume and partially pre-digest sugars and proteins, creating compounds our bodies can use more readily. They produce organic acids that influence digestion and microbial balance, and they can unlock or increase the bioavailability of compounds, think curcumin in turmeric, so less goes farther. Taken together, a modest, consistent habit of including 1 small fermented drink per day can introduce live microbial support, small molecules that affect digestion and metabolism, and tangible sensory variety that makes healthy eating less of a chore. That's the practical sense in which these drinks can transform routine health, not as a magic bullet, but as an evidence-aware, low-cost shift that nudges digestion, blood sugar handling, and nutrient uptake in favorable directions. Simple troubleshooting and Q&A for beginners with safe, practical answers. Q. I'm lactose intolerant. Can I still drink kefir? A. Many lactose-intolerant people tolerate kefir because microbes consume much of the lactose. Start with a small serving and see how you feel. If dairy is a problem, try water kefir or a plant-based fermented option instead. Q. How can I tell if my home-brewed kombucha or tepache is safe? A. Clean equipment, predictable fermentation times, e.g. kombucha 7 to 14 days, tepache up to 48 hours, and normal vinegary or fruity smells are good signs. Throw away batches with fuzzy mold, putrid odors, or unusual colors. Refrigerate once you reach desired tartness. Q. Can I drink these every day? A. Small daily servings are common and generally well tolerated. Think 4 to 8 ounces of kefir, 1–2 ounces of beet kvass, or 1 to 2 tablespoons of ACV diluted. Varying drinks across the week gives a broader exposure to different microbes and compounds. If in doubt, start slowly. Q. What if I don't want to ferment at home? A. Buy refrigerated, raw, unpasteurized bottles labeled "contains live cultures" and check sugar levels. Supporting local makers at farmers markets can be a great alternative. Final practical challenge and closing nudge. 1 week, 3 steps. Try this simple challenge to see what small, consistent fermentation can do for you in 1 week. Day 1. Introduce kefir, 4 ounces with breakfast for 3 days straight. Day 3. Add the ACV ritual. 1 tablespoon ACV diluted in a full glass of water, 10–15 minutes before your largest carb meal. Day 5. Try a small beet kvass shot, 1 to 2 ounces before dinner. Record how you feel: digestion, energy after meals, sleep, and even appetite. If anything feels off, pause and reassess. Which of these 11 will you start with? Drop your pick in the comments. Kefir if you want a research-backed probiotic baseline. ACV if your focus is steadier post-meal energy. Or a cultural favorite like tepache if you want something flavorful and low effort. If you want recipes and a printable starter guide to take to the kitchen, check the description for linked downloads. Above all, be curious and cautious. Fermentation is an ancient practice with modern benefits when handled with basic care. Try 1 small drink this week and see how a little microbial magic can fit into your day.